Hello and welcome back to the programme. 5 years to the day since the Bataclan attack in Paris, EU authorities are again turning their attention to the fight against terrorism. Home Affairs ministers are meeting to discuss how to beef up Europe-wide law enforcement and implement existing rules on firearms and anti-radicalisation. On Tuesday, the leaders of France, Germany, Austria and the Netherlands called for stronger external borders and a coordinated plan to deal with foreign militants. In the last month alone, 8 people were killed in 3 separate attacks in Paris, Nice and Vienna. Well, with more on today's conference, let's go to Brussels to speak to our correspondent Maeve McMahon. Maeve, morning to you. Just explain to us then, what's on the agenda for today?
Good morning, Rosie. Well, EU Home Affairs ministers will be reflecting first on those recent attacks that took place in Austria and France. They'll be adopting an 8-page declaration that was put together by France, Germany and Austria that will set the tone, if you like, for their response to terrorism and beefing up security in Europe over the next couple of years. Now, they'll be joined by the European Commissioner for Home Affairs and Migration. That's the Swedish lady Ylva Johansson, who ahead of today's meeting said that terrorism has been around for decades, but the only way that the EU can fight it is if they unite as a whole, and not just politicians, but also society. Let's take a listen to her speaking in the European Parliament earlier this week.
When I grew up, that was the RAF, the Red Brigades, the IRA, the ETA. The terrorists change, their causes change, and their methods change. What doesn't change is the fear, the death and the suffering that they bring. What we must do is to be united as a union and as a society, and to do everything we can to oppose them, to fight them, to defeat them.
Now, in that meeting today, the European Commissioner for Home Affairs, Ylva Johansson, will be telling ministers that in the next couple of weeks, the European Commission will be coming out with a new counter-terrorism proposal, a proposal that would give a bigger mandate to Europol, that's the EU's police and law enforcement agency. She'll also be reminding EU member states to implement the measures that they've already adopted and better share intelligence, better share information and share information in a better way to make sure that terrorists are all registered in the EU's Schengen information code. She'll also be telling ministers that in the next couple of weeks the Commission will be coming out with a project that focuses on integrating people better so that people all feel like they feel at home in Europe and feel like they have a purpose in life.
Well, we'll be looking at some of those announcements today on Euronews, but maybe this isn't a new problem. Authorities have been trying to tackle this for years. So what actually is different this time?
Indeed, they've been attacking it for years, and back since the attacks in France and of course here in Brussels in 2016, there have been a lot of ideas put on the table, but the problem is EU member states are slow to implement them, and also EU member states have different ideas and different political agendas when it comes to tackling terrorism. And as well, Rosie, EU legislation takes a long time to get finished off. For example, they've been working now for 2 full years on a regulation that would eliminate terrorist content online within 1 hour. Now, Charles Michel, ahead of today's meeting, has been calling on EU member states to adopt that regulation in the next couple of weeks, especially this year with the lockdown, where people have been spending so much time on the internet. Now, counter-terrorism experts have been telling us here on Euronews that apart from policies and statements coming out of politicians, what society in Europe all has to do as well is take a good look at themselves and stop stereotyping and stop confusing Islam with Islamism. Let's take a listen now to Didier Leroy.
I personally think that the thing that's lacking the most is a whole battery of measures which would make it possible not just to equip airports with new metal detectors, but also equip citizens, Europeans, Muslims and non-Muslims, to help them fight against the real strategic threat posed by global jihadist actors like Al-Qaeda or Daesh, who are widening the gap between citizens on both sides of the Islam coin. We need to put an end to everything that confuses Islam with Islamism, jihadism, Wahhabism, Salafism and terrorism.
And expect this topic of counter-terrorism also to dominate an EU summit that will take place a little bit later in the month of December.
Maeve, thank you very much. Our correspondent there in Brussels. For the last 2 decades, counter-terrorism in the West has been focused on militant Islam. But law enforcement is increasingly turning its attention to far-right terrorists who target minority and refugee communities and the politicians who support them. German authorities have been sounding the alarm on the rise of right-wing extremism for years. Our reporter Jonah Kalgren is in Berlin, and he says far-right extremism has been a problem in Germany since the 1990s, but seems to be increasing.
Over the last year, we've had 3 attacks that have come from people inspired by or even organized by far-right extremist ideology and groups. And the security services here are saying that it's now the biggest threat to the security in Germany. Now, you have 2 different types of far-right extremism the way it stands now. You have the kind of lone wolf. These are people that are inspired by far-right extremists in other countries as well as in Germany. They're sitting online on chat boards and so on and getting radicalized there. An example of that would be the attacker, the terrorist in Halle last year who was trying to kill people at a synagogue. And then you have the more organized groups, people that are actually training together, preparing for what they call Day X, when they're going to overthrow democracy in Germany. And according to the German police, about 12,000 people are involved in those groups or in the periphery of those groups. And that is obviously also a huge threat. So this is something that the authorities are taking more serious here in Germany, and something that is seen as an increasing problematic big threat.
How are they taking it more seriously? What kind of practical things are they doing to try and stop it?
Well, some people would say that they're not taking it seriously enough still, but they have hired 600 police officers in the last few months that will focus only on right-wing extremism, and they're also saying that they're infiltrating these groups in a different type of way than they have been before. But now you also have an additional problem, a little extra spice to this pot of problematic ideologies. You have the Corona people that are out demonstrating on the streets, and they have also started to attack in low-level type of things, attacks over the last few months. And they are also, in certain ways, affiliated with the right-wing extremists. So that's another additional problem for the security services here in Germany, and something that they're also saying that they're going to take more serious now and in the coming months.